But I'm interested because this season 2 is of X-Men 97, but you originally came in on X-Men 92. You know what I'm saying? This is like as you
Yeah.
said, like 30 years plus. And as you've discussed, like there's an audition process originally. I think I even saw you at C2E2 where you kind of described how you got a call from the agent and you was like, they was like, look, get down there and audition for this role. And he was like, all right, whatever. I got 2 kids. I'm trying to, I'll be there. You know what I'm saying? You went down there and did it and walked away with the job. But what I found interesting in that answer was that you discussed the fact that you were raising 2 kids. And it sounded like you
Yeah.
even said alone in that clip. And I think that gets brushed over. Like, could we talk about the complexity of you having to juggle your acting career, you moving from country to country and then landing on this United States based project, but still having to do the parenthood thing, still having kids at home, still having to kind of juggle that. Like, what's that like? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it was hard. It was hard for a while. I mean, I'm originally from Barbados,
Right, right.
and growing
Agent.
up in the 70s with, solid middle class conservative Bajan parents, you
Oh,
didn't even say out loud that you wanted to be an actor
mm,
professionally, right? Everybody would have humored me if I'd said, obviously my personality was such that, acting, performing made sense, but nobody would have been surprised if I'd done that as a hobby. But the fact that I wanted to do this as a living was not something that anybody was used to. And then so I came up to Canada, and my whole career was in Canada because although
okay.
X-Men was a US based show, every single actor in X-Men the animated series was a Canadian actor, and we were all based in Toronto, all of us.
Okay.
Um, and at the time that that happened, now oh, it was rough at first. It was rough, I tell you. I remember
Talk
my
to us, please.
oldest, my oldest had it harder than my younger one did, because of course when the oldest was around, there was nothing. Mom was getting one gig here and one gig there. I remember this poor child. I remember us having to walk home in the snow because I didn't have the token to go on the subway that day. I just didn't
Wow.
have it. So her little 5-year-old legs had to get up that hill in the snow. And I remember
Mm.
we were playing some game, and I was talking about, the polar bears are behind us. Keep going, girl. Keep
Oh,
going. The polar
wow.
bears
Okay.
are gonna get us. And it was this whole thing. And then, things started getting better and better. And I was lucky. The gigs started happening. I moved from doing all of this. I did a lot of theater for social change. Uh,
Yes.
I did anti-racism work. I did anti-homophobia work. I did, stuff on homelessness, on spousal assault, everything we did. And then I always say that I think it was because women were getting positions of power in the theater industry. Now, remember, I'm going to talk mostly about theater because theater's my thing.
No,
But if
please.
you look at my IMDb page, you will see a whole slew of film and television. I did film and television to support my theater habit. Um, Theater was my thing. I loved
I love that.
the that immediacy. I loved flying without a net. I loved the fact that there were 1,000 people out there in the audience and it was live. And if I didn't remember, the lines, I just love that stuff. I have a soft spot, and because people used to ask me all the time, why don't you leave Toronto? You're doing so well. After a while, I started doing better. Why don't you go to LA? Why don't you go to New York? And I just wasn't. I had those 2 kids, and I'm
Mm.
sorry, you guys ain't got no damn health care.
No,
So
it's true. It's
Nope.
true.
if
True.
I was gonna be,
True.
if I was gonna be a struggling, about to make it actor, I preferred to do
Toronto.
it where I could take my kids to the doctor
Right?
I'm with
without, because I wouldn't have had any insurance in those days.
true,
Um,
true.
but then yes, it all started coming together, and actually, right when they asked me to audition for X-Men the animated series, I was finally doing the big stages.
Ooh.
So
Oh
I
wow.
wasn't I wasn't I wasn't in church basements and parks
Mm-hmm.
and government offices and hostels and halfway houses and all of that kind of stuff doing my theater anymore, because we did our plays, we did our theater wherever the audience was. We weren't
Yeah.
in a theater
Of course.
asking, you don't ask assaulted, battered women to come to the theater to see the play. So we
Mm-hmm.
were in these spaces, and I wasn't there anymore. And there I am. I'm on one of the biggest stages in Canada now, and I'm doing Shakespeare, and
Mm.
it feels as though I am arriving. And,
Mm,
I own a car now. I don't have to make my babies
Okay.
walk
okay.
in the snow.
No more
I have
polar
a
bears
car.
chasing you and your kid
Up the snow.
Yeah.
up in the snow.
And then that's just when my agent calls and says, go for this audition. Cartoon, a cartoon. And I'm like, really?
Yes.
Seriously? Can't you see that I am making it? I am on the big stage. I own a car. Do
Do
I
you
look
know who I
like
think
I need?
I am? I'm an
Yes.
actress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do
Don't
you
thou
know who I
realize.
think I am?
Betwixt thyself
But
and
I
realize who. Like, yeah, I got you.
but I was also balancing that with the fact that, because things were just starting to gel for me, I was still hungry. I was really, really
Mm.
hungry. I'm young. The kids are smallish, and yes, it feels like it's coming together. And no, it's not nearly as scary as it was in the bad old days when you were asking the landlord to take half the rent until the money for the radio drama came through,
Mm,
or the 2 days that you had on a movie. It's coming up next week, dude. So just take this. Those days are moving behind me, but I'm still hungry,
mhm,
and this was something that I'd never done before. So when
Mm.
I walked into that audition, it was sort of a mixture of feelings.
mhm.
It was, okay, come on, let's get this over and done with. I what is this, Scooby-Doo, Yogi Bear? This is what cartoons are to me, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and but on the other hand, there is this, what the hell is this? I've never done this. Let's
Mhm.
go do this. Let's see what this is about. Look, there's something else that I can do. And yeah, so it was really, it was interesting, and they called it Project X. But the truth is that if they had told me, I don't know if you guys know any Caribbean people, and I don't know if you know Bajans,
Yes, we know,
but
baby.
traditionally we're very conservative, right? So
Mhm.
my old man wouldn't even allow comic books in the house.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if we were going to be reading, we were told, get a
The
book,
Bible. Oh wow.
right?
Probably
We're
the book
not
of
doing comic,
Ecclesiastes or Genesis or something like that.
something. So, so, even if they had said, instead of calling it Project X, even if they'd said X-Men, even if they'd called out all the names of the X-Men, if they'd told me, yeah, you go in an audition for Storm on the X-Men, I would have been like, who?
You're right.
What?
Right, right. All right. How much you
Why?
pay?
What? Yeah. What is
What's
this?
the
They're
salary?
gonna pay me when I do this voice?
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, it was beautiful, and when I got her, I fell in love with her immediately. And I always tell the story that it was the part of her that was queen that
Mm.
Mm.
I found that I could connect with. And I can't remember all the other descriptors that they used of who this person was and how they contextualized this character. I just know that something in what they said made me go, oh,
Mm.
she's a queen. I can do that. I can do that. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Um, and I just reveled in the power of her, because there just there simply aren't that many roles for Black women
Okay.
where we have that level of power.
Mhm.
And I loved it.
Can I say thank you for that response? Can I say, you saying specifically that there was something about the way that they described Storm to you, that, oh, she's a queen, and I see that. I'm a Disney girl. So growing up in the 90s, I had the Disney princesses, and those were my everything. But and I did not know how to articulate this or what it really meant as a child. I just knew that the princesses did not look like me. And as much as I love them, they're not for me in the way that they were for other little girls. And then there was Storm. And I tell this story all the time on my own social media platforms. But what you brought to that character, that regalness that you picked out and then put into her voice and her mannerisms, it meant everything for little girls that look like us, because we did not have the Disney side of it. We didn't have, it is very interesting, the conversation around representation, particularly when maybe a non-Black character is made into a Black character. Well, what are we going to do? How are we going to see ourselves? You're taking away my childhood. My childhood was the default was, I'm not going to see myself represented. Get in where you fit in. And then there was Storm and everything that she is. So I just wanted to jump in and tell you, your way of thinking, what you brought to that character, so much impact. And I know that you must hear it from us all the time. I want to be able to tell you directly what that meant to me and how that shaped me as a person. So,
and I appreciate that, because I was very, very, very well aware when I was doing that I represented something important. I might not have understood where X-Men sat in the in the canon of comic book stories, or where it sat there, but I knew how important it was to have a Black character like this. And I saw it all the time, and I mean, I saw it when, before I even auditioned for this, when I was out in Stratford, and of course they bus the inner city kids out to see Shakespeare, and you could see them, all, and then you peep through and you see them, they're all really, really restless, and at that point, there's nearly 1,000 kids out there, and most of them are Black, or some people of color, kids of color. And when I made my entrance as Hippolyta, the place went silent, because again, it's the same thing. It's a woman with power, and the way that the director had directed it, it was amazing. Everything stops when I crossed the stage. I was crossing in 5-inch heels at the time on a really, really bumpy set, and all I could concentrate on was not falling down. But when I made my exit and the entire place erupted, I knew, and I wasn't being egotistical. That had nothing to do with what Billy Shakespeare wrote. That had to do with the fact that these kids had just seen a queen across the stage, and it looked like them.
Yes.
And she was, and so yes, I was very well aware of what that meant.
Wow.
And I've been proud, really, really proud, and honored to wear that mantle.
And
Because
from what I hear,
representation is so important. Representation is so important.
Oh, it is the most important.
And what I'm hearing is, so that you're just used to playing a queen, being a queen. You just didn't.
Oh yeah.
Was that Midsummer Night's Dream fairy queen over there as well?
Yes.
She's like,
yes.
I was born to be a queen. I'm Alison. What's up? That's what I got from that.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Alison, I'm wondering, because it sounds like in that experience, you saw firsthand the impact of not only your ability to act and embody these characters, but your voice. Like the voice that you brought to Storm, because you don't just talk like any old average, you know what I'm saying? Like you speak majestically with that Barbados voice. that we know Storm comes to the stage with. When they say bring him the forecast, oh, you bring him the forecast. You know what I'm saying? So I'm wondering, like, the audition process. I'm really curious about it. Like, as you were in front of those kids that came in from the inner city, you're also in front of those same kids in front of the television set. So when you get the
Yes.
audition, does it say, okay, this is a black woman with a majestic voice, we need you to read it like this? Or does it just have words on a script and you make of it what you think it should be? Like, what's the coaching process when it comes to establishing the actual voice of Storm?
That first audition, I walked in with nothing. So what I gave them was, now remember that the writing in both iterations of this is top notch. So if you're an actor with a certain kind of sensibility, then what you do is you tailor your delivery to fit the speech that you're given. Obviously, if you walk in and somebody's talking, "Yo, girl, sup?" That's that's one thing, you know? If somebody is saying, "Winds blow, lightning," then when you see that on the page, those aren't toss-offs.
Mm-hmm.
This
Right.
is not casual conversation. This has gravitas. This has, when she announces before she does her stuff, it's almost like an incantation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Um, that's why I always find it really, really compelling, of course, because they don't, as far as I know, as far as I remember, we don't talk about it a whole lot in the animated series or in X-Men 97, but she comes from a long line of blue-eyed, white-haired witches.
Yes.
Yes.
Witches, magic,
Yes.
not
Yes.
just superpowers,
Mm-hmm.
not just magic.
Beyond being a mutant, Storm has her own ancestral magic. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And I don't know, again, it's one of those, I don't play things when I make discoveries about the character. It's not like you go into the studio and you play it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't suddenly go, "Oh God, she's really a witch." And it changes what you do. It is just, that's part of what goes in there. And you can tell from the writing that these things that she said, they're almost magical incantations. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the 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 witches in Macbeth, are doing this, and cauldron boil and cauldron, and she is going, "I call on the sands." And to me, there was only one way that you could sort of do that. There was a way that you could convey the majesty. There was a way that, not just majesty, not just regal, but the idea that she is connecting to something that is older than she is,
Mm-hmm.
that she's calling on ancestors
Mm-hmm.
when
Ooh,
she does this.
just gave me
And
chills.
that that is something, and that's unique for us, and that was something that I felt almost instinctively
Mm.
from the very, very beginning. um and I mean, and it also helps that I'm from the Caribbean, and we tend to be pretty presentational, and even our theater is sort of very, very out there. It's not, yeah, I call our style of performing presentational versus that sort of navel gazing individuality. um Characters on stage in Caribbean plays tend to be archetypes rather than individuals. And
Mm-hmm.
so I knew this archetype of the powerful woman who could
Mm.
call on her ancestors, who
Mm-hmm.
could weave magic. And so all of that sort of found its way in. And you do it off instinct.
Mm-hmm.
I just driven in from Stratford. I didn't know what this thing was about. I didn't know how you did voice acting. I'd been doing this for quite a few years, but I'd never done voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd done a radio play. I did a whole bunch of the BBC from England would come down, and again, the gravitas, this voice, and I would be doing all of these Greek plays and all kinds of stuff for radio, but I had never done anything for animation. Um, but you tap into instincts, and
Mhm.
and when you've got good instincts as an actor, and you're presented with really good storytelling
Mhm.
and some kick-ass writing,
Woo!
then you just trust it and go with it.